In this video, I'm going to give you my most sincere insights and opinions on the Siam or the Thai Kingdom or Thailand or whatever you want to call it. I spent the second half of 2024 traveling in the country from July to November, and I have made many trips during the last 20 years, watching how the country kept on changing. So these are the latest insights that I can give you as of the end of 2024. And I would like to start with the getting in, getting out situation. For American and a number of other citizens from advanced wealthy countries, they now allow us to stay for 60 days. This does not work out 100% well because some months have 31 days, plus you want to get a stamp to extend your stay maybe a couple of days before, just to make sure, just to leave a buffer. So it kind of scrambles your stay and you end up at the end of your welcome on the 25th or 26th. So I would really like to see a more flexible plan, maybe 65 days per stamp, or maybe 90 days to make it even easier. But in any case, in order to stay in the country, I had to do some border runs. There are many ways of doing this. You can fly out of the country and fly back the same day, or you can stay overnight in a hotel, or you can hire a border run company. What they do is they typically pack a dozen or 2 dozen people into a big van and they race to the border in the morning. Hopefully you get your stamp and they race you back to the hotel or wherever you are staying. The price for these, I would say the border run is the least expensive because you just have to pay for the run itself. There's no hotel stay. You might have lunch at the border or whatever, but it's the cheapest option. To fly out of the country and to stay overnight at a hotel, which I also tried, is the most expensive option, but it is also the most luxurious one. You pay for the hotel, but you can have a nice hotel, you can have a nice dinner, no rush, no racing in a van to the border. But I would recommend taking the border run and hiring a company rather than an independent taxi driver to do it. There is more of a security in numbers, I feel, and dealing with a company that is known to the people at the border because they have done it so many times. As far as getting into the country and getting out, I think a lot has improved. Getting out, for example, is entirely without dealing with any human beings. You have some people in uniform standing around, but you basically scan your passport. There is a face recognition. It's very modern. And of course, some people are going to complain about face recognition, and it is a privacy concern. I acknowledge that, but it is very convenient, and government knows where you are anyway. I mean, there's no way to hide it. They give you a limited time, a stamp allowing you to stay for 60 days. So they have to know whether you are in the country or not. And the US also wants to know it anyway. You have to declare it on the way back to the US, like which countries you were visiting anyway. So this face recognition is not a very big deal, in my opinion. What has been a big deal for me always was to not go into the cancer machine, as I call it. It's that irradiation machine which scans even your face and your eyeballs with no benefit or purpose at all. And the whole scanning is actually it's cumulatively cancer-causing radiation. So I always go the magnetic route, and they really treat you nice at Suvarnabhumi Airport because they have the cancer machine and they have the magnetic as well, and you can choose which way to go. It's up to you. And most people don't care, they don't know, so they go into the cancer machine. I went through the magnetic gate, and that works for me very well. No problem with the airport. And I used to stand online for over an hour at Suvarnabhumi. That did not happen this time, either getting in or leaving the country. So I think overall the volume of tourists has been increasing during the last 20 years steadily, but the airport is not jammed, so they are keeping up with the increase in the numbers of the tourists. Second, I would like to look at the prices. The prices are shockingly high everywhere. What you used to do, you used to be able to hire a cab to go across Bangkok, say from the Nana Plaza to some soi next to the palace, Khao or something like that. I used to take the taxi there in the middle of the night to have drinks, enjoy the nightlife, and then I come back. It would cost me $2 each way. That's gone. It's now $15. It's still cheaper than New York prices, no question about that. But this country is no longer a bottom basement third world country. Especially Bangkok feels much more like a second world place, to be honest. Not to mention that in some areas, for example, when you look at their luxury malls, it's more luxurious than anything in Manhattan. And I'm saying it without any exaggeration. You are welcome to go there and see. So prices have increased tremendously for almost everything, but not everything, because the fruits and various foods made by the poor people at the bottom of society who come in from their poor neighborhoods, they have not increased their prices 1%. A slice of melon is 20 baht now. It was 20 baht 5 years ago. It was 20 about 10 years ago. They have to face their own expenses going up, and yet they are not passing on any of these increases. And if these people can do this, you wonder how big corporations are telling you that they need to triple and quadruple their prices in order to survive, which is probably all a lie anyway. So in general, prices have gone up a lot. Food prices would still be about half the US. Same thing with rent. I would say for real estate, less than half. You could get a pretty decent one room, maybe even one bedroom place in a decent, secure condominium for about $800 a month. I was staying in Airbnbs throughout the whole time, and I would say around $800 is the minimum you have to spend to get a decent place. But that will get you a swimming pool, air conditioning, big fridge, almost everything you would want, really, a gym. So you get a lot for your money, and it's certainly a fraction. It's much less than half the price of Manhattan. You look at Airbnb prices in Manhattan, you're not going to get much even for twice, even for $1,600. Healthcare used to be the big ticket item. I used to save so much money on doing dentistry, dermatology. I even had a minor plastic surgery a decade ago. In the US, to do that would have cost me about $70K. I had it done in Bangkok for $2,700. So those kind of crazy prices saved me back the money I spent on the airfare. And that's gone. As of 2024, the healthcare prices quoted at the best hospital, which is Bumrungrad, the only hospital I recommend anybody to go. These prices are now the same as New York, or maybe 10-20% less. It's no longer a benefit to visiting the country. So visiting Bangkok or the Siam, you're not going to save any money by doing healthcare, dentistry, or anything here. There are many private medical offices, dentists, and so on that are still offering services at significant discounts, but they have many one-star reviews as well. People complaining that their teeth had been destroyed and so on. So I personally would not take a chance. As far as I'm concerned, the party is over for cheap, top quality healthcare in Southeast Asia. Transportation. Transportation, I mentioned the taxi that's gone up. The SkyTrain system is a really good, much newer than New York City. It's a very nice new system. It is seemingly a little bit less expensive, but you have to pay for each transfer. You don't have free transfer in between lines. And the farther you go, the more you pay. So the $3 you pay in New York City, which allows you to transfer without limits, so long that you stay in the system, is not that much more than what you would spend in Bangkok. In Bangkok, you would be spending about $2 to go anywhere more than just a few blocks on the same line. And if you have to transfer it onto another line, you'll have to pay another $1 or $2 again. So I would say public transportation is about the same money as New York City, as surprising as it may sound to some. And yes, it's nicer, it's cleaner, it's safer, it's all of that, but still no discounts there either. Taxi cheaper than New York, but much, much more than it used to be, whatever it is, tuk-tuk or whatever. Frankly, the cheapest and the best option I could find was the Bolt application, which I highly recommend you install if you visit either Asia or Europe. It's been a very reliable, very fair service for me. I've used it in Europe, I use it in Asia as well. You just go to bolt.com and you can download the app from them. It is, I would say, the same thing as Uber or Lyft in the US, but perhaps a little bit less expensive and just very punctual and reliable. If the driver cannot find the place, you don't have to pay anything. So I had some trouble with Uber charging me for things that I wasn't responsible for. With Bolt, they reverse the charge. If there's any problem, they stand with the customer. So that's really, really nice. And that's the transportation solution I would use. As far as renting electric scooters, renting anything, the country is pretty backward in still relying on gasoline-powered scooters, which can be rented everywhere. But then there's a huge problem with that one as well. I used to really enjoy riding around on rented scooters in Phuket, and that fun is now all gone because they require you to have an international driver license, which is utterly silly and just a way to make money for them. And it's very cumbersome to get. You would have to go into a government office and stand online all day and suffer to get this. It's basically a translation of your English language driver license into English, which makes absolutely no sense. This whole idea of a license translation comes from the colonial era, when mainly Britain and France, the colonial powers, introduced this idea of having a license that is written either in English or French so that everybody within the colonial empire could understand it. But you still had to have your local license, so this is just a translated addition to it. In any case, you either stand online all day and suffer, or you ride illegally, but then they can pull you over. And I watch them doing the pullover things, the roadblocks, every single day. In Phuket, in Pattaya, it's nonstop. Bangkok was the only place where I don't think they care. But Bangkok is not a place where you would rent a scooter anyway. They have excellent public transit, or you can call a cab. It's not even safe to ride around in that crazy traffic. So my view on it is that I personally did not rent a scooter. Some people still do it. You can go through the process and get a translation, or maybe you can do it even at home back in the US or wherever you are from, or you can take a chance and ride illegally, but that is just an aggravation that I did not want to deal with. So that's my view on transportation. Food is as good as it's ever been. Thai cuisine has never been a shining star as far as dessert is concerned, but the rest of it, the savory cuisine and the tropical fruits, you don't really need dessert with the tropical fruit this good. You just use the fruit as a dessert. And with the spicy dishes, not the curry crab that is sold in the US as Thai food, but the much more interesting lean seafoods, the basil chicken, the fried foods. They are, to me at least, they are some of the best savory foods in the world, really. So I really enjoyed it. It's still less expensive than in the US, but prices have gone up in that area as well. You can now buy really fancy, well-presented dishes in the upscale malls and supermarkets in Bangkok, or you can go for street food, which is still really, really cheap, surprisingly so. So the street vendors, just poor people, mom and pop selling stuff on the street, they have really not raised their prices much or not at all. Finally, I should say a little bit about the nightlife scene. If you go visit the country for the girls, I would say there's no point. There's never been a point, because sitting on the plane, if you're from the US, it's a 27-hour flight. I don't think it's worth it. I mean, you could just go to Mexico or anywhere in Central America, and you could actually get action for much less, significantly less than what you would pay for a Thai woman or ladyboy or whatever your game is. So, not to mention that I think it's kind of disrespectful for a culture like this, for a culture as dazzling and amazing as this one is, to visit it for nothing but action. But this is up to you. So, in my opinion, if that's all you want, then a trip to Central America from the US is just so much more cost effective. But yes, they would be still a lot cheaper than US. Let me put it this way. The money you pay in New York, Miami, or Los Angeles for fun, it's still several times the price. My biggest disappointment in this trip was Phuket. Phuket has become very expensive. One scoop of Haagen-Dazs ice cream was $5, and I made a note of this because this was probably the most extreme price that I saw. But I did see polyester t-shirts for $25, baseball caps, New York Yankees for $45, and things like that. So prices have gone up hysterically. Patong Beach, especially, the most developed place on the island and the only village that has a little bit of a nightlife, was a real disappointment. It's been taken over by people from what I call the halal countries, and I don't like what they do to animals or people for that matter. It's not my favorite culture. Very disrespectful of everyone. The local culture, other people as well. It's not a fun crowd to hang out with. So Patong Beach is gone. If I went to Phuket again, and I probably will not, but if I went again, I would probably stay in the north, away from Patong Beach, which can be very boring at night because they don't really have much of a nightlife. But at least they have nicer beaches and it's a much nicer crowd. Frankly, the high point of the entire trip was in Phuket. Generally, I did not like Phuket, but in the north, I visited this animal shelter, mainly dogs and cats, and I did a video on it. I'm going to put the link below so you can see that video. It was an absolute delight to visit the place. Very well organized, very clean. It's amazing what they have done for animals. They sterilized over 1 million animals in the last few years, and how those homeless street dogs are kept, how nicely they are treated. It was just really uplifting to be around people like that who dedicate their lives to do this. And there were a lot of people, tourists coming by because they welcome visitors. You can walk the dogs. It's a way for them to accommodate dogs to the possibility of being adopted. And of course they have adoptions and they try to push adoptions as well. Plus, if you don't want to adopt a dog, but you're flying back to U.S., Europe, whatever, and you're willing to be the guardian of the dog and manage the transfer, you don't have to pay for it, but just managing the transfer of a dog out of the shelter to somebody who's adopting it in the US or Europe or Australia, you can do that. And it's fun. It was fun for me meeting people like that, people who volunteer and love animals and all that. So that was a good part of Phuket. And Phuket still does have the stunning views and the various things you can do, the snorkeling, diving, all of that. But if you want to stay at a nice place, it's not going to come cheap. Many of the beaches have been taken over by private resorts. So if you can afford to pay at least $300 a night, then that would probably be the best way to stay, and not to stay for a long time, just maybe a week, 2 weeks, and do the usual things. Go to Phi Phi Island, do the snorkeling trips, and then get out. Because otherwise the island is really no fun. I think it's overcrowded. It's getting horribly overdeveloped. They are putting buildings absolutely everywhere with no limit, and it's full of garbage as well. It's astonishing how little they care for the environment, especially for an otherwise really kind society like this one. But I think it's also mostly the fault of government. So Phuket was no fun. Obviously, if you've never done it, you have to do it, but be ready to pay a price. The best part, I had a good time in Bangkok. The only thing I don't like, I like everything, the shopping, the nightlife, the busyness of it, the craziness of it, and there are so many new things to see. They are in many ways obsessed with electronics technology, so they have a lot of new tech that you can see there. But unfortunately, the pollution is just as bad as ever. They have not done much about that, and I did not enjoy staying more than a month at a time because it's just getting to my head. And also prices have gone up. The highlight of this trip, the best stay I had, was Pattaya. Pattaya is known as a kind of seedy, dirty place, which in the center of it is. But I was staying this time closer to Yom Tien in the southern part of Pattaya, and I was surprised at how good and even upscale it was. There was a little pocket beach called Cozy Beach next to, really walking distance from where I was renting, and you can see my short videos on this. In fact, on the entire trip, I have short videos on my personal site, on my bicycle site as well. You can see some of them, even some longer videos. And so Pattaya really worked out well. It's a great place to stay. It's kind of halfway between Phuket and Bangkok. It's much more built up than Phuket. It's more like Miami, but it's not far from Phuket either. I mean, Bangkok. So if you need to go into Bangkok for whatever, business or medical or shopping, you can drive up there in something like 2 hours, and there is a small bus that takes you up there. So you're never far away from Bangkok, but you don't have to deal with all the smoke. And they have this Pattaya Bad bus, which is an open truck that you can hop on and off and go anywhere in town. It costs $0.33, something like 30 cents a ride. That's a crazy deal. So transportation is astonishingly cheap in Pattaya. It's very easy to get around because of these Bad buses. And of course, there is also the Bolt taxi, which I also used. Much cheaper than either Bangkok or Phuket to get around. And you don't have to deal with the crazy prices of Phuket. It's kind of a resort beach area, but there is enough competition and the closeness of Bangkok so that they cannot raise the prices up to the sky. So I was very happy with what I got from it. And overall, that was the best part of the trip. I do recommend that you check out the videos. In conclusion, I would say because of the way prices are rising, I don't think you have much of a benefit of going there. If you've never done it, obviously you would have to do it. If you've never been to Southeast Asia, I would do definitely Bangkok and maybe Pattaya, maybe a short visit to Phuket and a side trip to Bali if you have never done it. But overall, the whole area is just getting more and more expensive. It's overwhelmed by too much tourism, too many people, too much pressure on the environment. And that's why I don't even think that retirement is all such a good idea at this point. Probably within 5-10 years, by the time I would think of retiring, it's probably going to be almost as expensive as a Western country. It's developing so fast. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. So, yeah, it's been a good trip. It's always been a good place. I'm very drawn to the culture of it. But then I spent a decade studying and practicing Buddhism. So, in my case, it's just a place that naturally clicks with my personality. It may not work for everybody. So this is an exotic culture for the West. Unfortunately, becoming rapidly westernized and increasingly less and less unique, but still so far from anything Western. So it's still a fun thing, but I just don't see a benefit of trying to retire there, going there for action, for girls. I just don't see it. To go there for the culture, yeah, definitely. If you're interested in the arts and the culture, the cuisine, definitely. You have to do it at least once. But then you may not want to do it again because it's going to be so expensive.